The NHL Draft lottery was just completed. Find out who was lucky enough to win the top 3 selections, and we'll go through the top 15 picks as well. That's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So the NHL Draft lottery was just completed live here on Sportsnet. We now have the results and know who the top 3 teams are going to be in the NHL Draft this summer in Vancouver. Now, before we get into that, let's take a look at how the order was based on standings, and we'll discuss quickly who had the best odds of winning the lottery here. As you can see, the Colorado Avalanche hold the pick of the Ottawa Senators in the 2019 first round selection here. They had the best odds of winning. They had an 18.5% chance of being that first overall selection. The Los Angeles Kings were in the number 2 spot with a 13.5% chance. New Jersey was in the number 3 spot with an 11.5% chance as well for getting that top pick. And of course, you can also see the odds on the screen for their odds of being in the top 3 there as well. Picks 4 through 15 were Detroit, Buffalo, the New York Rangers, the Edmonton Oilers, the Anaheim Ducks, Vancouver Canucks, Philadelphia Flyers, Minnesota Wild, Chicago Blackhawks, Florida Panthers, Arizona Coyotes, and the Montreal Canadiens. So of course that's based on the standings. So now that the draft order has been completed, let's take a look at the new order based on those results. Remaining in the number 15 spot is the Montreal Canadiens. They're still going to likely get a pretty solid player at that spot. Montreal just barely missed the playoffs and were not fortunate enough to win one of the top 3 selections. The number 14 selection still remains with the Arizona Coyotes. Of course, the Coyotes had a really solid bounce back year, had some steady improvement, but they did not win the lottery here, so they remain picking in the number 14 selection. The number 13 selection overall belongs to the Florida Panthers. So again, they are exactly where they remain from before. They did not have any luck here and moving up in the standings for the draft lottery. Number 12 overall selection belonged to the Minnesota Wild. So obviously before, Minnesota was picking at number 11. So they have slid down. It means that the Chicago Blackhawks hold one of the top 3 selections. Number 11 overall selection belongs to the Philadelphia Flyers. So of course, that means they were not fortunate enough to win one of the top 3 picks as well. The number 10 selection belongs to the Vancouver Canucks. So unfortunately, the Hughes brothers more than likely won't be reuniting here at the NHL level. Unfortunately for Vancouver fans, I know I was kind of rooting for them a little bit. It would have been fun to see the Hughes brothers end up together. I would imagine it's very unlikely we see the Canucks be able to work out a trade to get that number 1 selection here and move up 10 spots. The draft lottery, though, was not the Canucks' friend tonight. Many times now we've seen the Canucks not have very good luck with this draft lottery selection. The number 9 overall selection belongs to the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks are another team that had a major down season this year. They got a lot of aging veterans, could certainly use a nice top pick to inject some solid youth into their lineup. But unfortunately, they will have to remain at the number 9 selection. They were not lucky enough to win one of the top 3 spots. The number 8 overall selection belongs to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Oilers have had their fair share of time of picking number 1 overall. So I know there's many people out there who didn't want to see the Oilers pick first yet again. Obviously, they got Connor McDavid, was their last number 1 overall selection a few years back. And unfortunately for the Oilers, they're not that much further ahead as far as their on-ice results go ever since. But the Oilers will be picking number 8. They were not lucky this year and were not fortunate enough to grab one of those top 3 spots. Number 7 overall selection belongs to the Buffalo Sabres. So last year's draft lottery winner, who was fortunate enough to grab that number 1 overall selection and grab Rasmus Dahlin, was not so lucky this year. They will be picking number 7. The number 6 overall selection belongs to the Detroit Red Wings. So another team that actually was not lucky here. I mean, Detroit was having a down season. They're going through a rebuild, as we know. They drafted very well last year. They're going to be in the exact same spot that they were last year when they were able to grab Filip Zadina. On the standings, the number 6 overall selection was before the New York Rangers. So that means the New York Rangers were lucky here and do hold one of those top 3 selections as well. The number 5 overall selection belongs to the Los Angeles Kings. So obviously the Kings were in 30th spot at the end of the NHL season. They would have been picking 2nd if they went by standings alone. So that slides them down 3 selections from number 2 down to number 5. So not very much luck here on the side of the LA Kings tonight. The number 4 overall selection belongs to the Colorado Avalanche via the Ottawa Senators in that big trade with Matt Duchene. I think this is probably the best case scenario for the Ottawa Senators and their fan base and the organization as a whole. Obviously, they haven't had very many things go right. They haven't had any luck at all, really, and they've made some very bad decisions to put themselves in that predicament. But really, overall, with that Matt Duchene trade, things obviously have not worked out. Duchene's now a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets. They don't have the #1 overall selection, but they did keep their pick last year. They selected Brady Tkachuk at this exact same spot, #4. So I guess to kind of make a bad situation as good as possible here is that's the best case scenario that the Senators could hope for, is that they were not fortunate enough to win one of the top 3 picks. I can't imagine whoever goes at #4 will end up being a better player than Brady Tkachuk. So obviously, you could probably make the argument that the best thing the Senators could have ever done was to not make that Duchene trade in the first place. Obviously, looking back at history here, it certainly would be interesting to see how the team would be doing if that never would have happened. But at the same time, it did, unfortunately, and we can't change history. And if they had to give up one of their picks between last year and this year, I would think that they're good. The Avalanche are going to get a pretty solid player at #4. But at least at this point, it's probably a fair argument to say they won't be a better player than Brady Tkachuk longer term. So that means your top 3 selections belong to 3 teams, being the Chicago Blackhawks, the New York Rangers, and the New Jersey Devils. So let's go through these top 3 picks. The #3 overall selection belongs to the Chicago Blackhawks. Now the Blackhawks obviously going through a little bit of a rebuild here as well, more of a retool. They still have some pretty solid veterans like Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, having career years. They've really had a terrific season this past year. Unfortunately, the team's depth overall, though, needs to improve, and adding a good, solid young player that they can grab at the #3 spot certainly will help quite a bit. Many NHL prospect ranking systems have Vasily Podkolzin of Russia as the #3 overall prospect, so it'll be interesting to see if the Blackhawks go down that road or not. If they do, they might have to wait a year or 2 to bring him over. However, the Blackhawks may decide to go down a different road, but either way, they'll be getting themselves a really solid prospect at #3. Now, the #2 overall selection belongs to the New York Rangers. Now, surprisingly, one interesting stat is the New York Rangers, in the history of this, has never had a draft pick in the top 3. It was really interesting to see. Maybe they might be able to grab #1. It was down to them and the New Jersey Devils, so obviously that means the New Jersey Devils will be picking #1 overall here yet again. Obviously, a couple years back, they had the opportunity to pick 1st overall and selected Nico Hischier. So more than likely, the Devils are going to be the fortunate ones here to be able to land Jack Hughes. You're probably going to see the New York Rangers grab Kaapo Kakko, and both of those teams in the Metro Division should get a significant boost next year. Can you imagine over time here if the New Jersey Devils can have Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier as their 1-2 punch down the middle? That could be absolutely huge for them longer term. Now, I know Nico Hischier's not putting up absolutely huge point totals as of yet, but the potential is there. The skill level is there. Obviously, they had Taylor Hall out for a big chunk of the year this year. This could be a major turning point for the Devils and for the Rangers. Both. Kaapo Kakko is certainly a terrific prospect in his own right. He has a lot of upside as well. They are a different kind of player, and I think either team would be fortunate to grab either of those players, and it'll certainly accelerate both of those rebuilds. We should see some big progress next year for sure. So now that we know the actual draft lottery results, we will be conducting some mock drafts based on what players I think these teams will and should be selecting. So stay tuned for those. They will be coming soon here. We'll probably do a few of those between now and the actual draft in June. Certainly was a fun experience. Nice to see some different teams here near the top. Obviously, the Devils have had a recent #1 overall selection. One question I pose to you as well, is I know I've seen some people kind of mention it before, is when you're granted the #1 overall selection through the draft lottery, should there be some type of rule that you're not allowed to win for an X number of years, maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? I'm not sure what the number would be, but we've certainly seen some teams win repeatedly here. Obviously, the Oilers are the greatest example of that, but now the Devils have 2 first overall picks in a fairly close period of time as well. So let me know your thoughts on that. I know it's an interesting concept, and I know that I've seen many saying, especially with the Oilers, but not only them, but others as well. So, of course, as always, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on the draft lottery winners. Who do you think these teams are going to be selecting, especially in the top 3 picks for sure? Let me know your thoughts, and we'll continue the conversation in the comments section. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. There will be all kinds of 2019 NHL draft coverage between now and the draft in June, so certainly stay tuned for that as well. Thank you very much for watching. We will catch you next time.